Y'all look at that thumbnail, right? Y'all saw that thumbnail. Woo! Because that summed up tonight's game, guys. Oh my god. Oh my god. Or I should say yesterday night's game, but Jesus Christ. What a fucking annihilation. What an annihilation of a game. And it all occurred after the first quarter. Wow. For those of us who had doubts coming into Game 5 of the Toronto Raptors versus the Philadelphia 76ers at the Air Canada Centre at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we were met with an emphatic response by the Toronto Raptors to essentially step on the throats of the Philadelphia 76ers and continue the momentum they had built on from Game 4. Needless to say, this game was a lot different than any of the games that played out. Particularly Game 1, in that while this was a blowout, the biggest one of franchise history in the playoffs, it came from the rest of the team rather than the two-headed monster that was Kawhi Leonard and Pascal Siakam, which I may have jinxed by stating. But no matter, it came from the rest of the team. They showed up to play tonight, guys, and the stats do not lie. You look at Philadelphia right now and look at this. It's like an inverted scenario. They're playing they're scoring like the Raptors were in the games that they lost. And look at the Toronto Raptors, guys. Every single starter in double figures. And when you go down to the bench, it gets a lot better as well. Fred had a good game. We'll talk about that. I still do not have much confidence in him. But you know what? We're not going to hammer him too hard. So, let's go. First quarter. Other players we noticed immediately stepping up for the Raptors, particularly Marc Gasol and Kyle Lowry, as well as Danny Green. Danny Green really seemed to have found some rhythm this game, and he was making threes at an exciting rate like he was in the regular season. This forces Philadelphia to not cheat on him. And coming into this game, actually, I noticed immediately from the first quarter, Philadelphia gambled all over Kawhi because they thought Kawhi was going to be the only one that showed up again for the Toronto Raptors. And, it is a gamble, but somewhat of a smart strategy. They just try to trap and double Kawhi, focus Kawhi, put all their attention on Kawhi Leonard in hopes that none of the Raptor starters would be able to hit their shots and they would clank. Well, unfortunately for Philadelphia, Toronto was making their shots tonight while they were clanking. Now, most points are not scored by Kawhi, actually. I think at one point Lowry had the most points, then it quickly became Siakam. But with Lowry being aggressive, getting to the paint, and Siakam actually playing through his injury and still getting his buckets, this was going to be a game where if you're Philadelphia, you need big games from Jimmy Butler and Joel Embiid to kind of cancel out this contribution that Toronto is receiving. Fred also got put in. He had a bounce back game, I'd say overall. He had a really good possession where he manages to strip Joel Embiid and play some decent defense on Jimmy Butler, and which leads to a turnover. Right, so good game for him. Gave Lowry the rest he needed. Moving on. So I was worried a little bit after Serge got accidentally elbowed by Kawhi, and I looked at the damn forehead, man. I was like, God damn, what kind of sharp elbows this guy has. It's just like a fucking blood spot, right? But he came back in the game, and Philadelphia really, I thought that they really tried to capitalize on Serge being out in terms of rebounding, but they were not good rebounding this game compared to the Raptors. I think that they've really cleaned up, Toronto at least, has on the defensive glass, and even to an extent offensive glass, but very much so defensively, they've cleaned up when it comes to boxing out, rebounding, and calling out missed shots. So yeah, we go to the second quarter, and I love this. This is where I had my hopes increased by 100% of the Raptors winning this game. The Raptors are attacking J.J. Redick on defense. Yes, they are exploiting his lack of an ability to play any semblance of defense, and it is working. You got Lowry back and J.J. Redick into the post. You have Siakam doing the same thing. They're getting switches onto Redick, and they are getting easy freaking butt kicks because they're forcing the help defense, and now that they have other players making shots, once you force the help defense, they're swinging the ball, and people are being forced to run out to the 3-point line, so they just swing it around and get a nice shot. Now, Kawhi, he hasn't been able to establish much of a rhythm, but he's still actually being a decent playmaker in all of this. But yeah, his his contributions this game largely came from getting everyone else involved rather than making himself just be ridiculous in terms of scoring. So at one point, the Raptors start getting offensive words, and this is where Philadelphia's defense really, really starts to fucking fall apart. You notice by the end of the first quarter, it was actually close, 27-26. That second quarter, oh my God. 17-37 second quarter, guys. This is like if there were any quarter where you could point to distinctively where the game completely tipped in Toronto's favor, you're going to say that second quarter. Especially with, I think, halfway into the second quarter, Toronto goes on a massive, massive run that Brett Brown cannot seem to call a timeout for, or that the 76ers aren't able to respond to. And yeah, he's not firing his quick timeouts anymore. And I'm just thinking, like, why isn't he doing that? Because that was able to kill a lot of momentum in the games earlier. Instead, he let this run balloon to, like, I think 16 before he finally calls a timeout with less than, I think, 4 minutes left in the second quarter. Yeah. So I think that at that point, I was pretty comfortable turning out the game, but obviously I didn't. I was going to watch the rest of it. Now, Kawhi actually manages to get a sick, nasty freaking dunk, I think, in this quarter as well, to end it. And that really energized the crowd. And the casters are, like, notified, like, are telling everyone, he already has a double-double. I'm like, what? Already? Considering how he's been, like, double-teamed the entire series, and he hasn't been shooting the ball particularly well. But I don't think he went to the free throw line too much this game. So he already has a double-double. Great on that. And yeah, so moving on to the third quarter, 76ers come out on a 10-2 run before Nick Nurse calls a timeout. Now, this was a critical run for the 76ers because they managed to actually trim the lead down to 13 from, I think it was, 20 points or something like that. So they do a really good job of actually making this, putting hope back into the squad, boosting up morale. And if they wanted to have any chance of, like, coming back, they had to be able to maintain their rhythm and respond after that Nick Nurse timeouts. Sadly, they didn't, because afterwards, the defense that had tightened up for the 76ers began to slowly loosen over time as they're unable to get good shots. With that said, though, you had JJ Redick missing, shots that he normally takes, as well as Embiid just straight up. I don't know what's going on with him. He's got a sickness every single day, but he's missing, like, a lot of shots as well. Tobias Harris had a good game, I think, in terms of just scoring. But yeah, Redick was missing, and James Ennis, like, this guy that was torching the Raptors 2 games ago, like, where the hell is this guy? Let's take a quick look. Yeah, he was not making shots either. So, I mean, it seems like what's happened. Like, Mike Scott made a lot of the shots. Butler, not a good shooting night for him. It seems, you know what's happened, I think. I think that now the Philadelphia 76ers are experiencing what the Toronto Raptors felt in Game 2 and Game 4. Well, and Game 3. Where they did not shoot the ball particularly well. Difference is, in Game 2, it was close. Game 3, it was a fucking blowout win. Game 4, Toronto managed to pull it out even while shooting, not as good and not getting as much contribution as they wanted. Now, this blowout was the biggest blowout in the entire series. And if anything, like, it's a really good sign that the adjustments that Nick Nurse figured out for Game 4, he stuck to, and they appear to be working. Everyone now is activated, right? You don't have to solely rely on Kawhi to do all the heavy lifting anymore. You've managed to get the regular season to, like, Toronto Raptors at their apex, which was just after the All-Star break, where everyone was firing on all cylinders, right? Like, in the playoffs. Finally, you've managed to figure out a way to get the bench involved and contributing, along with maintaining that your starters are able to get good looks and make them. This is really good. Now, to be fair, the starters were never going to continuously go, like, go on to shoot as poorly as they did, and we cannot expect the 76ers to do the same. So we go into the fourth quarter. Raptors are out, but rebounding 76ers at this point. The game's already over. It's just Embiid is like tilted. Like he is tilting super hard. He throws cross-court three turnovers that like 3 passes that lead to turnovers so they go nowhere. Like in the third quarter, and I think he has like a total of 8 turnovers, and it's just, you can tell this man is tilted, and the fans in Drake freaking clown him with the fucking airplane that he did in game 3. Like, oh my god, like this was not. And then you have him getting postered by Kawhi. So yeah, this was not good for him. Respect to Jimmy Butler, he still was trying to play. With the 8 minutes left, Brett Brown concedes defeat. Then you pan to another emotion of Embiid looking at a stat sheet. And I'm just like, bro, what are you looking at the stat sheet for? You got absolutely demolished. There's nothing, like, you already know the stats in your own head. Your stats, at least. It don't matter. Like, what are you looking at the other stats for? Like, yeah. So it ends up being a 36-point blowout. This was just a great win by Toronto, because now they've won where Kawhi goes for insane numbers, and they've also won with Kawhi not going for insane. I think Toronto really has figured it out now. You saw every single time Embiid on, Gasol would go on. They're like Nick Nurse is matching minutes, and Brett Brown, he can't hide Embiid like he did in the previous games that they won, right? He's not sticking Tobias Harris onto Marc Gasol as frequently. Right, Embiid can't afford to cheat on the defense, which means the Sixers cannot rest on rebounding. Right, their whole game plan to like beat the Gasol matchup and get Jimmy going was to dare Toronto to make shots. The rest of Toronto, and it worked for 2 games, and it could have gotten them a 3-1 lead, but it didn't. And here we go, guys, into Game 6 of the Wells Fargo Center. And I have a lot of confidence Toronto's going to close this out in 6. That was my initial prediction. This is a really good morale booster. Toronto does need to be prepared, though. Coming into Game 6 in Philadelphia, their backs are against the wall. They're going to throw everything they have at them. That's going to be a vicious, scrappy first and second quarter. I think it's going to be tight the whole game. I don't see Toronto completely blowing them out. I think this is going to be a close game. So yeah, guys, I will see you after Game 6.